or I should say work session.
I'm sorry.
You're all right. Because you're the first one on the,
Okay.
and the only one right now.
Thank you, sir.
Here. Because I can always make a copy of Roberta's.
You know what, I even gave mine.
That's okay, just take that one, it's totally fine.
Would you like the sheriff to explain everything and get going?
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, Sheriff.
Okay, what I handed you out is just a copy of the monthly schedule for South End. Now, this schedule that you have does not include our North Lake deputies. So with this in mind, this includes Officer Sitzma and the personnel that we have available for law enforcement, response to calls, administrative issues, and supervisory detail. So with that in mind, if you take the very first one out of the equation, Heather Ebersol, you have 7 people currently available to respond to calls for service in the south part of Lake County. Now, at the most, I believe that Lakeview has ever staffed is a chief and 4 officers. I don't know if I'm correct on that, but since I've been here, that's the most they've ever staffed as far as full-time people. Looking at this schedule here, let's say hypothetically we can add 4 more officers to that schedule. So that gives us an additional 4 more officers to this schedule. That's what would be available for policing in South Lake County. So we would have a minimum of 1 to 2 officers or deputies scheduled or assigned to the town of Lakeview at any given time. Now, we provide right now 21 to 22 hours a day, 5 days a week, calls for service. I don't know what the town has scheduled lately, prior to Chief Behan being gone, but I think it was pretty close to maybe 18 hours at most, somewhere around there. So are we going to get to that 24 hours that you want? Probably not. And the reason why I say that is this. The hatred and dislike for law enforcement these days is escalating. We could get to the 24-hour coverage, but what security, what safety does that give our officers and deputies if they're out there by themselves? It makes them impotent because they can't work proactively. They have to work reactively. And you're not going to get an officer out there by himself at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, proactively going and handling things that they should be going and handling. Traffic stops, checking doors of businesses, so on and so forth. So with the increase, say we can increase this schedule by 4 persons, my vision is this. And simply at this point is a vision, okay? As we all know, you start going down that road and things need to be tweaked here and there, and they need to be changed and deviate from, and so it can be a more productive product in the end. At some point, we may have to do that. So again, keep in mind, this is just my vision. We take the county of Lake and the town of Lakeview. We divide it into sectors. The town being sector 1, and then you have sector 2, sector 3, and sector 4. Now just take this out of the equation, because we're not even going to address that, because that addresses itself, because we have 3 resident deputies up north. We're probably not going to respond up there with any of these people. So just take this in consideration. So what we have is the calls for service that we're going to primarily get are the town of Lakeview. You're going to get West Side, you're going to get New Pine Creek. You're not going to field too many calls in Adele or Plush. But these other areas, so we have somebody assigned, 1 or 2 deputies assigned to the town of Lakeview at any given time. And then we have deputies assigned out here on these other sectors. So these people that assigned to sector 1 are responsible for all the routine calls that happen in this area. Same with this. The person assigned here is responsible for routine calls. The person assigned here responsible for routine calls. Now we have an emergency call. It doesn't make any difference where you're assigned. You respond to that call. So what we don't want to do, but what we have all seen in the past, is if you had an emergency call, instead of sending 2 officers or 2 deputies that sufficiently cover that call, we dogpile them. We have 3, 4, 5, they're all lined up in a row. I saw one time I came driving down the road, there's an elderly person stopped on a traffic stop. There was 4 or 5 people stacked up with their lights on. In my opinion, that's unacceptable. So we have to kind of restrain ourselves from just running to everything that's going on. Let's just say hypothetically we have an emergency call in this side of the town. This person will respond, and let's just say there's just 3 people on right now. This person will respond, this person will respond, this person will shift to the town. So we always have coverage in the town. Now, if it's a call where it requires all 3 people are going. So there'll just be a shift in responsibility. There will always be a deputy assigned to the town of Lakeview. I know I've read on Facebook, as I'm sure all of you have, is how this is going to work. We're going to hire 9 officers with the funds that are provided for the Lakeview Police Department.
Really?
That's unrealistic. You know, we read that and we go, where's that information coming from? And I think people just have an idea, and they're just putting their ideas out there as to what is in the best interest of the citizens of Lake County. I think what we have to do is we have to put our personal interests, we have to put our personal ideas aside. What is in the best interest of the citizens of Lakeview? What is in the best interest of the citizens of Lake County? And if we contract with the sheriff's office, what you have done by just saying, yes, we're going to do that, you have doubled your police force. You double your police force and have more officers and more deputies than you've ever had before. We'll be able to provide a better service, an ethical, moral, and legal service for law enforcement. We'll have people on at night shift, not just one person, but we'll have multiple people. My thought process now is we provide right now 3 people in the south when we have our fat days. If we have 4 more bodies here, we can provide 4 or possibly 5. Now in the summertime, what I'd like to do is, because we're unable to be proactive, we are unable to be proactive. It's not that we don't want to be, we do want to be, but we are unable to do it. We just don't have enough resources. I talked to Sergeant Campbell about this. I've talked to Under Sheriff Paul about this. Is I would like to have my 3 uniform officers out there. And I'd like to put 2 officers in plain clothes. And they'd be out there, and I'm just picking a time, anywhere from 2 o'clock to 6 in the morning. And we'd have a no tolerance policy. Anything that moves out there gets stopped. If there's criminal activity, they get arrested. At least we're stopping people and identifying them and putting them in a place where if we have a crime the next morning, we can start from square one and we can identify who we stopped at what time in that area, what crime occurred, and then we work backwards from that. As opposed to, everybody knows what time we start, everybody knows what time. I apologize. What time we get off, they have scanners. So when they hear the last person go off duty, it's time to come out and play. And so that's when the majority of our crime takes place, between the hours of 2 o'clock in the morning, and I would say 6 o'clock in the morning. We did an audit, Paul and I, when is the time that we have for the most calls for service. Daytime, you have your average calls. Swing shift, you have your average calls, and then it spikes. After about 6 o'clock p.m., it starts spiking. That's when people are drinking, that's when you start having your domestics, that's when the bars, people start going to the bars, you have your fights, you have your disorderly conduct situations. So we'll have the majority of our manpower during those time frames. So that is, it's not a sophisticated process. It's a very simple process. Contracting doubles your police force. Contracting lets us be the same identity. We work together, we work collaboratively, and we can accomplish more that we have not been able to do in a long, long time. And I'll give you an example. Come January, there is going to be protocol that our officers and deputies are going to be involved in a task per hour. We see it all the time. A lot of people are complaining that, well, there's a lot of cars at dispatch. There's a lot of cars at the police station. They're not doing anything. Well, that's not necessarily true. They're getting information for cases that are investigation at dispatch. They're writing reports at the station and so on and so forth. But there is a lot of validity to that. There's a lot of horsing around. There's a lot of goofing around, and there's no supervisors are here. So there's going to be a worksheet. And there's going to be a self-initiated activity every hour. And that includes walking down these businesses and shaking doors to ensure we don't have forced entry, and we don't simply have a door to a business that's just left unlocked. So the possibility of a burglary, and what we've seen here is vandalisms to some of the businesses. You have this high-profile policing, which we're going to have more people out there at the hours of darkness, and hopefully that will dissuade a lot of people from committing crimes. So basically, that is all I have. Like I say, and this is what I would like to add to. I know that there's some ideas is that, okay, we're going to retain our own identity. We're going to retain our own police force. I would like to advise against that, and I'll tell you why. It's because there's always a segregation. There's a sheriff's office, there's a city PD. That city PD can't go past 9th Street. The sheriff's office is not coming into 9th Street. Well, that's a fallacy. But a lot of people complain that they'll see an officer pass 9th Street. Well, what's he doing out here? He shouldn't be doing out here. So if we integrate, and you have this person shift and respond over here, and you have a Lakeview car and a Lakeview uniform, there's going to be a ton of complaints. If we are all one team, one unit, there's no segregation anymore. We go where we need. One of the problems that we have with dispatch, and I have discussed this with dispatch, is we'll get a call for service. And that call for service will go up on the board in queue. Now that does not get dispatched until somebody says, I'm responding to that call. What I have encouraged dispatch to do, look at the board, who's in service. If there's a call in queue, dispatch that officer. Let's get a more expeditious response. Let's give the citizens what they deserve in law enforcement. An expeditious response and a good quality investigation. Now we can't do that if we have lazy people and nobody wants to take the call because they're fighting not to take the call, as opposed to dispatch saying, okay, I'm just going to use names. Sitzman, you're going to this call. Okay, the next call goes to Kinsley, he goes to that call, the next call goes to Tag, and the next call goes to somebody else. So we're dispatching them as they come up, as opposed to just letting them sit in queue, and sometimes they sit in queue for hours. And sometimes it's legitimate because we don't have anybody available. But if we have that queue over 30 minutes, my policy would be call that victim back, or call that complainant back, and let them know there's gonna be a time delay. They deserve to know. They shouldn't have to be waiting for 2 or 3 hours, waiting for a deputy or officer to come back there and provide the service they need. They pay their taxes, they deserve good quality policing. So if it goes past that queue, it flashes, and then they call them back, and then the next available officer will be dispatched. But the identity of being one unit, one team, I think is imperative to the success. This is going to take, if the council does choose to contract, it's going to take a minimum, in my opinion, of 2 years to get up and running. Now, even get up and running, what you're going to have is you're going to have inexperienced officers. And they're just going to be getting their feet wet on being by themselves. It's going to take another 2 or 3 years to get them to be where they're adequate and comfortable and confident in doing the job that requires to be done. We have a deputy right now up in North Lake, and I would pit her against anybody. She came here new, she didn't have any experience. We were able to mold her and train her and develop her into the type of deputy that we wanted to be. And she is an exceptional deputy. Well, unfortunately, she's looking at other places and she's going to be gone soon. Now, I don't have any problem with that, but my point being is we need people, when we hire them, that are dedicated to our community. Because what we see so often is officers who get their feet wet here, get their certification, and then move on to bigger and better things. So what I'm looking for when we hire people is somebody who's committed to this community, who's somebody who's dedicated and is going to stay here and provide the service that we need for years to come. So with that being said, I know there was an informal poll that was conducted on Facebook. There was like 377 people that participated in that poll. I think this says a lot, not only for what the citizens of Lake County want, but the perception and the quality of policing that's provided by the sheriff's office. 92% of the people polled wanted contracting with the sheriff's office. There was 5% that was unknown, and there was 3% that did not want it. I think that's an overwhelming desire by the citizens of this county as to what direction they want the council to go. Now, I have no dog in the fight. I think we both would benefit from it. I think the town would benefit from it. I think the county would benefit from it. Concerns are that we're going to draw all the resources from the town and put them out in the county. Well, that's not going to happen because we're one team. It's not the county versus the town. It's law enforcement helping everybody, the citizens of Lake County. So, and again, let me reemphasize. Sector 1 is always going to have 1, possibly 2 deputies in there at any given time. There will be available for call response at any given time 11 people in the south part of Lake County. So that's twice as many as the town's ever had. So,
where would you get these 4 new officers?
well, you have, and this is what I'm thinking. You have 1 officer right now.
He's on this list.
Yes, but you're missing 4 personnel.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm thinking, is that's where,
no, I understand
Okay.
that. Where are you gonna find the bodies to fill those positions?
you talking about monetary wise?
No, I'm talking about recruiting somebody.
Okay.
Because we found it incredibly difficult, and there aren't a lot of people that we can entice into Lakeview, and it puts us right back in the same position you were just talking about.
Mhm.
You hire somebody new, you pay to get him trained. We figured, what, it takes about a year to get that person through his classes and through the trainings and getting them up to speed. It's almost a year that we invest in that person. He stays for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and he's gone.
Right.
So
And
we're
that
having
is
trouble
something,
finding people
Right.
that will even take the job.
that's something you're never going to be able to avoid. When I first was elected sheriff, I looked into contracts. And a lot of sheriffs had contracts, 5-year contracts. Well, they're not worth the paper they're written on because they're not binding. The courts have already ruled that you cannot contractually hold somebody to a job. So I've had multiple people call me and ask me if we're contracting. And I said, that's not my decision, it's up to the town council. And they want to apply, but they do not want to apply for the city. And that's just a hard fact that we all have to realize, because they don't see movement and progression in the police department. Under Sheriff Hobble has had multiple people call him and inquire about working for the sheriff's office. And it's always mentioned that, well, if you guys contract with the city, we will apply, but people don't want to apply for the town right now because it's in disarray. I think that, and I could be wrong, I think that if the town council decides they want to contract with the sheriff's office, you're going to get a larger array of applicants applying for law enforcement. I know there's a sergeant that retired out of, let me take that back, a sergeant that just resigned from Union County that is interested in coming to work for Lake County. We both had him when we were in the academy, and he is a stellar of a person. He is very educated. He is a very hard
Trained.
Absolutely. I mean, he's what is it called? Key term. Right, he's ready to come. I mean, if he gets hired, I mean, if we go through that process, he gets hired, he can hit the road running. So these are just some people that want to do that. I've got, I don't know if you guys know this individual, Jafe Adams. He works over in Albany, Lebanon, someplace like that. He has an interest in coming back. Now, whether he will or not, I don't know. But he's expressed at some point an interest in coming back here. He's been working for Albany for many years. He turned ready. And if we do get people that have ties to the community and are ready to hit the road running, not only do you have a qualified officer ready to hit the road running, but you have commitment here because family's here. So.
And that was part of the problem is, one, they wanted to move here, but their wife didn't. And so.
And that's always a problem. I remember when we moved here. My wife was born and raised here. When I got here, I thought, my God, but this isn't going to happen. I struggled. I truly struggled for about 3 months. And then, after a while, this is
Girls
home.
on you?
Yeah, this is home. You're not ever going to get me to leave. So, one of the things that we have, and Under Sheriff Hobble will hit on this a little bit more in depth than I can, is the Lake County Sheriff's Office for the past 10 years has not increased in one body. We've got the same number of deputies now we had 10 years ago. However, our calls for service has increased 500%. With what we have done for the town for the last 2.5 months, our call load has increased 400%. I'm starting to see a morale decline in my people. I'm starting to see people get burned out. We can no longer keep up the pace. It's just overwhelming. We're getting people to take more vacation, more sick leave. And it's hurting us, and it's hurting us bad. They're burned out. They get overtime on call-outs, and there's no requirement. There's absolutely no requirement for a deputy to answer their phone when they are on their own personal time. But I can tell you this, I have never had one time that a deputy has not answered their phone when we call them to call out. They are loyal, they are committed, they're here to serve the community in which they live. They're proud of it. But they're reaching a point of burnout. They're getting to that point that they can no longer absorb working a shift for 5 days. On their days off, they get called out 2 or 3 times. At night, their sleep is broken constantly. And if you go to bed and get 2 hours sleep, get called out, go back home, get an hour, you're not getting that good quality sleep. And the potential for injury and the potential for a wrongful death gets higher and higher every time we do that. So we need bodies. This is an opportunity for the town to get bodies. This is an opportunity for the county to get bodies. We're one team, we work together, and the best interest of law enforcement is right here. It's the citizens of Lake County. And when I say Lake County, I'm talking about Lakeview and the county, and we're talking about everybody. A couple of cost-saving things I can think of is that contracting with the sheriff's office, I believe that you no longer have to pay that insurance premium any longer. Is that correct? And I believe that's significant, isn't it? Okay, so that's just one thing to look at, and it you know, it provides funding, administrative. And this is my vision: is that the town has funding for officers. You got a budget. That budget would be, I don't know how it works, you give it to the county, we make a determination, okay, what can we provide for this much money? We can provide this many officers, we can provide this kind of equipment, we can provide these uniforms, and then the big cost is vehicles.
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, I have my thoughts, it's different than what Paul's got, has his thoughts about. He's a guru on budgeting, so we just go with what, you know, his thought process is. But I'm thinking if we were to get one new vehicle every year, and then at the end of 5 years, cycle that vehicle out and get a new one and keep that process rolling, that would be cost effective. And the town, the officers would have the same kind of vehicles that we have, and they'd be good quality vehicles, and they would be dependable. So, okay. With that being said, you know, that's just, and you asked me to present a long term and a short term. Well, my short term is 5 years. I think that we can't do this and be successful without it being 5 years. And then I honestly believe, once we get the ball rolling on that, I think that the town will be so happy with what is provided and the coverage that we can give, that it may not want to go back to reintegration to law enforcement. But let's talk about reintegration. So we get people up to stuff, and we're going down the road, and everybody's happy, and the citizens of Lakeview and Lake County are happy with the law enforcement services. My recommendation would be focus on a chief. When you have a retirement, focus on a chief, get a good chief, a good solid leader that's going to be committed, and then reintegrate back into the PD. But then if you do that, what have you done? You lost half your police force, and then instantly there's that segregation again. We can't go past 9th Street. We can't come into 9th Street. So I think we all lose on that type of situation. It's a lose-lose, whereas integrating with the sheriff's office, we all become one team, we double our police force. It's a win-win for everybody. So before Paul addresses some numbers here too, does anybody have any questions that I can answer?
Do you have vacancies in your department that you're advertising for right now?
For the sheriff's office?
Yeah.
We do not.
So you're kind of at your budget max?
We are. I'm anticipating that there will be a retirement. We'll lose a deputy in 2 or 3 months because she's planning on going to another county. Sergeant Campbell is looking at maybe retiring in 4 or 5 years. So we're going to lose that position if that holds true. I'm running for this term, and I'm done. I'm not going to run for another term. My vision, my succession planning is, my guess is, Under Sheriff Pavel will become sheriff, and then follow down the same path that we're going. And then he'll have to have a succession plan when he retires, or whatever the case is. I know there was some concerns about, well, and I've been told, we don't have any problem with doing this with you there, but how about the next sheriff? Well, this is not a contract between the town and the sheriff. This is a contract between the county and the county. The sheriff is bound by that contract. And I think there should be a clause in there at any given time, if you're unhappy with the services or what we're providing, that you have an option to say, okay, you know, we gotta go our own ways because this is not working out. I think there should be a safeguard in there that says, you know what, we're not getting the service that we bid for, so now we wanna go back to where we were. And there would be a reintegration process of 3 to 4 years for that process. We would continue coverage until the town was up and running and the police services were at full staffing, so. And that's just my thoughts. Again, you know, I'm not advocating, because we're at full staff and we will continue to provide the services that we can provide. But at some point, we have to say, we can no longer provide services for the county and the town at the same time.
I like that.
I think I'm kind of concerned about the hiring of those 4 new people.
Okay.
And is that going to be a collaborative effort between the town and the county when it comes to interviewing and choosing new police officers? Or is that solely your role because you're the sheriff and head of this integrated force now?
I would say this, and this is exactly what I mentioned to Roberta. If the town agrees to contract, I am providing the service. The manner in which I provide that service will be my responsibility. However, I have zero problem with if anybody on this, in the council wants to sit on these interview boards, I have absolutely no process. I'm sorry, I have absolutely no problem with that. But the final decision as to who to hire will be my decision.
Well, you know what your team, how your team works.
Well,
And
this-
you can't hire somebody that you know isn't gonna work with your team, I understand that. But I would feel a little uncomfortable with turning over the budget for 4 officers and not having some kind of input at least on that. Or at least, you know, be part of the process.
Well, like I said, I have no problem with the council being part of the process, but this is how we hire. Under Sheriff Hobble, we put a board together. I don't sit on that board because I don't want there to be appearance of improprieties. Under Sheriff Hobble sits on the board. We have a citizen. We had a DA one time. We had a school principal. We had a citizen sit on there. If town council wants to sit on there, I have no problem with that. The recommendation of the board is, it always has been unanimous. There has never been a split because you get to see the quality of a person that when you come in there, you ask some pretty in-depth questions. So the recommendation comes to me as to, we recommend this person be hired. Well, unless I have an intimate knowledge that this person should not be hired, that's who I go with. So I'm kind of neutral as to the hiring process. I take the recommendation of my board, and that's 4 or 5, actually it's 5 or 6 good quality people that we trust in a process like that, and then we go forward with
Do you also do the same kind of background check that we do, like psychological testing and et cetera?
We go through a background check, interview people and their families and the people that they provide as references. And then we do a physical examination from a doctor. We have an oral board process, and then we do a psychological. And then after they pass all of that, then we offer them unconditional, a conditional offer of employment. And then they're on probation for 18 months. And it's not just you're on probation for 18 months and we wait 18 months and say, okay, well, now you failed, or now you passed it, and we don't have any documentation as to, well, this guy failed it, well, why did he fail? Well, I don't know, I don't like him. Well, we have probation reports every month. We document their strengths, we document their weaknesses. If they have a weakness, we sit them down and we discuss those weaknesses. Now, you are needing improvement in this area. At this time of your probation, you should be acceptable, but you need improvement. Now, we need to see improvement. And so we work on that specifically. So now we get to the 12th month. And if they're having issues, we allow them, you're having issues in this area. You tell me what you need for us to make you successful. You write up your own training program. If that's going to help you be successful, we're all about it. So now we allow them to write up their own training program. We look at it, and if it's acceptable with our standards, we will train them the way that they feel they can be trained the best. So then we do it their way, and if they're unsuccessful, at some point, people just don't cut it. Some people just should not be law enforcement officers. But we do everything in our power to help that person succeed. And some people just can't succeed. Majority of the people do succeed. But every month, they have a sit down. They are given their strengths. They are helped with their weaknesses. So there's no question in their mind from month to month to month. When they get to that point that they get terminated on probation, there'll be no question in their mind as to, what did I do wrong? Because they'll know every month. And it's all documented, and it's in the personnel file, so if they have any questions, they get copies of the probation reports. They have a sit down with me, they have a sit down with the undersheriff, and they have a sit down with their rater.
On Monday, we did complete everything with an applicant, and he's ready to go.
Okay.
So, and he's committed to Lakeview, or, you know, so if he passed everything through the
Good.
psych and the background and physical.
Okay.
So, yep, he's ready to go. That'll be another good one.
But the hiring process, you know, it's a small community, we know everybody. The thing that I want to avoid is a good old boy process. I do not want to hire somebody that just because we know them, they're our friend, and we're going to hire them. We will hire the best candidate for the position because it's a reflection on us as a hiring board, it's a reflection on the county as to who they retain, and it's a reflection on me as an individual that I'm hiring. Why did you hire this person? Well, because, you know, we pitched hay together out there and they down. No, it's because they were the best candidate for the job. And at the time, they finished top of the oral board, so.
And actually, next week, we do have 2 applicants, or 3, 2 that want to apply. So, we'll see how this all goes, but, you know, you've sat on our hiring board before, so
I have.
that would be good. I think it's first.
And like I asked you, if the board decides to contract, I would ask
Someone?
to put back that hiring process with these new applicants. Let's open it up and see what we get. And so we have a bigger pool of applicants to draw from.
So you're saying that does that include the one man who's really close to being acceptable, plus the 2 that are applying?
Nope, I would say the person that Roberta's already hired, he's hired.
He's hired.
Okay.
And but the 2
But the
people
other
who have
2,
just
you're
applied.
saying, put that back until we get this worked
Right.
out and then bring them in for the whole process.
That would be my
Yeah,
recommendation.
that's not a bad plan.
No, I don't,
That's
that's
not a bad plan at all.
Because I think that.
It's gonna have to be integrated into this team, so you wanna make sure that works.
Yeah, and you know, I would like to reiterate to every one of you, this is not the town versus the county. We're a team in this, and if we can't act like a team, and if we can't move forward as a team, then we haven't accomplished nothing. Because again, the best interests of the citizens of this county are at stake here.
Do you have the backing of the commissioners?
I was just gonna ask.
Well,
that.
we're gonna have 2 new commissioners. I have I don't know who's gonna be one of the commissioners, but one new commissioner, yes, I do have the backing of.
Because that's,
Do they have
We
to
can do all
approve
this.
whatever contract we do also, besides, it's not just your office?
Yeah.
but- Yeah.
Well, this is my foresight, is that if you agree, I would write up a contract. I would give that contract to you to look at. Okay, now we gotta tweak it, we need to take this out, we need to add this, we need to do this, we need to do that. So now it's acceptable between me and the council. Okay, so now it's acceptable, so what we do is we take that contract and it goes to the commissioners, and now the council and the
Legal team.
commissioners work it out.
Right.
And then, once that's worked out, then it goes to legal. And then the legal makes it a binding contract. And so this is not what I don't want is I don't want the council and the commissioner saying, okay, this is what you're gonna provide, and I look at it and say, you gotta be kidding me, we can't do that. Or it's so overwhelming that we can't do it. So I would like to work it out with the council first. What is agreeable to the sheriff's office and the town council, okay, that's good. Now the town council, your representative or whoever, all of you,
Yeah.
take it up with the commissioners. And
I
then
don't have a
tweak it
problem
however
with
it
that.
needs to be tweaked. And then it goes to legal.
If this were to happen, Sheriff Taylor, and what you just went through, that's a time crunching kind of thing. I mean, this has gotta happen, this has gotta happen, this has gotta happen. So we're putting this off
Right.
to implementation quite a bit. Are your officers willing to continue under the status quo? You said so many of them, you see this morale, business and tiredness and everything like that. Are they still gonna be willing to get through that next, I would say, 3 months?
I'll tell you this, my officers will do what I direct them to do. And I don't mean to.
No,
to say that.
that's fine, but are you going to be harming them in some way if this takes that long?
I'm never gonna harm my people.
No, I
You know,
don't think
my
so.
job is to ensure their safety, number one. That's first and foremost. I'm never gonna put them unnecessarily in harm's way. That's not gonna happen. But I think what we can do, if the town agrees, then we can start the hiring process. We can get the new hire up and running in a training car. We will continue to provide coverage to the best of our abilities. But at some point, until we're fully staffed, we may have to cut services. And what I mean by that is this, is we got a call here the other day that there's 2 goats standing in the yard of this person's house. Well, that's not a police matter. We're not going to that call. We don't have the luxury to be going to those calls, so I canceled it, and we're going to start trimming calls. Non-priority calls will be cut back. We are going to implement a self-reporting portal for the sheriff's office, and we can do that with the town if you agree that any crime, minor crime that has no physical evidence, no suspects, and no witnesses, and it's for insurance purposes only, you can sit on your computer and you can type it out, send it in to us, and I'll send a copy to the insurance company. We will review every one of those reports and determine whether there's solvability factors. And if there is solvability factors, we will assign it to a deputy for follow-up investigation. If there's no solvability factors, we will file it and it will be for insurance purposes only. That will cut down
Right.
on a lot of our calls. But right now, we are just slingshotting all over the place. And Officer Sitzma, he's staying afloat barely, but he's doing an exceptional job. But it comes some point, there's a breaking point, and he's just not going to be able to continue. You're going to start seeing sick leave. You're going to start, not just from him, but from people, they're getting exhausted. They need a day.
So is there any way we can take this time element and compress it somehow so that we're not overtaxing our officers on both ends?
I think that would, if they knew, if there was light at the end of the tunnel,
So that hope out there.
our guys would say, absolutely, we're going to continue to go forward because we see hope at the end of the tunnel. But the stagnant unknown
Yeah.
is what wears them down. And I think that if they said, if I was able to tell them, yeah, the town council has decided we're going to contract, we can implement that process without a contract being in effect. We'll just take baby steps and move forward step by step. And like the new officer, it's not going to do any good putting him in a car with Officer Sitzman day in and day out. He needs to learn different tactics and different methods from many different officers. And what we do is before he goes to the academy, we might get a lot of the FTEP training process in. That's your field training officer thing. So usually officers get hired, they're shipped off to the academy, they come back for 3 months, they go through this FTEP process. If we can get him through a couple months of it, go to the academy, come back, and then we only have a month to get him signed off. He gets certified, and then a month or 2 later, he'll be out there on his own with supervision.
Yeah, because he's going to the academy on the 10th of December. You know, but he would start tomorrow if he had a uniform, believe me.
You tell it, just tell us, like I say, all I need is a confirmation and I can start moving forward. And then I think what we can do, the first step is not only move forward with that process of getting him up and running, but we can put a notice out for hiring, that the town has determined to contract with the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office is accepting applicants for employment, and then we go from there.
Some of those applicants will be already certified too.
Some of them may.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that saves a lot of money.
Because, you know, we've spent 11 months, pretty much, 10 or 11 months, trying to find a chief, trying to save our department. And I thank Dave for hanging in there, because it hasn't been easy, and it hasn't been fair. And we have tried and tried, and right now, I had a guy interested, but he's not even close to being certified as a chief. So that's another 2 years into just that person, and I just hate to see us go backwards all the time.
Well, again, you know, there would be a clause in the contract that any time that, after a certain period of time, and like I say, 5 years, I would like to see this go forward. And honestly believe that at the end of 5 years, I think you'll be pleased with what you see and the progress in which has developed with law enforcement. I think you'll see an entity that we haven't witnessed before. There's always been a break. There's always been kind of a standoffish. This is the town, this is the sheriff's office, this is the state police. Well, we have an excellent, the sheriff's office has an excellent relationship with the state police now. I couldn't be happier. I would like to see that with the town, because there's always been that separation.
Well, and I can honestly say, out of all my years of being city manager, I would have never, ever thought it would be successful to go with the county. Just, you know, I've always felt very protective of the town's police department, wherever it is. But because we are so unique, because we are so isolated, I've seen a different light. And, you know, I can see that it could work very well. And I wouldn't have said that 6 months ago. I would have thought, but I just, what's working, what's happening right now is not working, just plain and simple.
I have a standard of policing that I will not accept anything else. That's just my style of policing. That's where I came from. That's where I was trained. And Dave and I have already taught. If you do that, guess what? The goatee's coming off, Dave. The goatee's coming off. We don't,
Oh, I never even thought
we
about
can
that.
have mustaches. We don't have facial hair.
Uh-oh.
You don't have beards, you don't have Fu Manchus, you don't have goatees. And my position was this.
Yeah.
When I took office, I said, the only difference between my guys and the bad guys is uniforms. You guys look like some thugs. Cut your hair, shave your beards, and look professional. You're not, you just because you wear a uniform doesn't give you the respect from the citizens. You need to earn it. And that's just my standard. And we have had disagreements about it, but this is my standard, and I'm not going to relent on that. I have a standard of policing, a standard of professionalism, a standard of service that should be given to the citizens, and that's the way it's going to be. It's my way or the highway, and it's just that standard. And I think that the citizens of this county deserve it.
Okay, Dave, what's your thoughts?
Well, I don't see a downside. I mean, for me personally, just from the equipment and vehicle standpoint. And that falls into safety too. I mean, when you're driving, using an aging force, not only do you have more mechanical issues, more upkeep costs, you also have the risk for breakdowns if we're going to a hot call. You know, if you're out there driving 80, 90 miles an hour going to a burglary or something like that, and you have something happen, that a newer vehicle, you don't even have those issues. So from a personal standpoint, it's a win-win for me. I think for the town it is also, because I've been here 10 years. And in the 10 years I've been here, I have seen this divide between the city and county. It's a city call, it's a county call. And I've witnessed people on both sides refuse to respond because of that, to the point where it's across the street. I never agreed with that. I don't agree with it at all. And I think one of the biggest bonuses of that is you would not have that anymore, because it's everybody's responsibility. And I told Roberta this, I work with all the guys in the sheriff's office, I get along with them fabulously. And our goal, everybody that wears that badge, our goal is the safety of the citizenry in Lakeview and Lake County. So I think what you would see right off the bat is an improvement in services, an improvement in our responses and in cases getting handled in a timely manner. I've also had numerous citizens approach me and ask me about it. It's been overwhelmingly in favor of it for the most part. I think there's been one or two that didn't know how they felt because they weren't sure how it was going to work out. I don't see a downside to it. I really don't. So, and like I said, for me personally, I mean, I instantly get 6 more guys that can back me up. So, whereas instead of being out there by yourself, it's like the sheriff said, it's impossible to do. Be proactive. And for me, that's really frustrating because I didn't accept this job to be reactionary, and it makes it tough when you don't have that ability. So, and I've had complaints from the citizens because of it too. And it's tough because you don't have an answer because, I mean, we can only do what we can do. So I think it's a good idea, and I think it's going to be a win-win for the town.
Thank you. Council have anything else?
I think we need to hear from the money man.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't do a whole lot, I didn't do anything budget-wise, but I pulled some stats from 2017 and 2018, and so I can give you guys copies of these so you can look at them. This is just call volumes, cases pulled. If you need one, though, I have one.
I'm okay, thank you, Paul. I can get copies.
So what I did is I just took a snapshot from June 1st to current, which I pulled these stats yesterday, so it was at 10/29, and pulled those numbers. And so if you look on the top, the sheriff's office calls for services is 3,102. If you look back to 2017, just to give a fair comparison, because the police department was somewhat fully staffed or close to fully staffed back in 17, and so it's a pretty accurate depiction of the impact that the deficiency in the staffing from the police department has put over the burden to the sheriff's office. And so as you can see on here, we responded in 2017 to 5,470 calls for service. We only pulled 402 criminal cases for that. So we respond an awful lot of time that we don't end up pulling a criminal case, making an arrest, it's a civil deal, or it's an animal call, or it's, a motor vehicle crash, or whatever, that we didn't actually pull a case report for. The police department in 2017 did 4,127 calls, and they had 279 criminal cases. So you can easily see that we're about 9,500 calls for service throughout the entire, now this would encompass the entire county, encompassing the city of Lakeview. 9,500 calls, and if you combine the forces of 9 with the sheriff's office and 5 if the police department was full, that's 14 people doing an awful lot of work on a regular basis. Now if you look back, or look forward to from June 1st of 18 through 10/29 of 18, the numbers are kind of staggering to what the workload has increased on the sheriff's office side. 10 years ago, we pulled numbers and we had 1,140 calls in a year for the sheriff's office. Well, now we're regularly doing 55 to 5,800 every single year, and we still have the same 9 people to do that with. But now, if you project out the way that these numbers are going across the board for this year, when there's only 1 police officer in the city, we're still handling call after call after call in the city, which projects us up to 7,400 calls just for the sheriff's office. Then the police department, if you project theirs, it comes out to 2,647. So they're actually at almost 50% of what they did last year. And so somebody's taking care of that call load, and it's the sheriff's office is the ones that are picking up that slack. So it was just to kind of put it on paper and show that we're doing the best we can, but we're limited as well. And we've been doing this, and we haven't asked for, any overhead costs or anything like that from the city. And I can tell you, the sheriff alluded to it, I do most of the numbers and the crunching and the budget for the county for the sheriff's office, and I actually manage 5 different budgets. And I didn't project in my budget the overhead costs that we're sucking in when, we've had instances where we're doing our call outs where we're paying overtime, and it may be on Center Street. And I'm calling 2 deputies out to go handle that call. And we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. I mean, the citizens deserve to have somebody come if they're being a victim of a crime. But there is a financial impact to the county that we're trying to suck up, and we're trying to make it work. But, I mean, there comes a point where there's a breaking point there. And our guys are starting to kind of, the morale's going down, they're not getting their time off, they're, I'm calling them out on their days off, they're, responding when they used to be able to get 2 days off, and now they're getting a half a day off, and so it is wearing on them. But this was just to kind of show some numbers on what is the actual call response. I mean, people don't know.
That's true.
So we can do some of the numbers still. Your chart up here, Sheriff, was, is that current, maybe I misunderstood, is that current staffing levels or what you're seeing? You have 4 currently up north, right? And then
No, I have 3.
So
That's
we have-
the zone,
okay.
zone 4.
Oh, okay, those are your zones. Okay, so
Yeah, these aren't.
but currently you have-
officers, yeah.
you have 3 up north, 6 including yourself here, so you have 9 total.
So where's the dividing line of up north? Is it
Paisley.
Paisley itself or north of Paisley?
Well, it depends. Usually if there's a call to Paisley, south.
Paisley
will
isn't real
cover.
busy, I don't think, but,
If we are tied up, north will come down.
yeah.
So it's a give and take, depending on what kind of call, who's available, and the manpower that's out there at the
Right.
time.
Okay.
So we could get really into the weeds on the numbers. I mean, and I'm not gonna go there, but I mean, when you really think of the, the population base too, and what you guys financially should be covering because of where the funds are coming from. Yes, you cover the whole county because everybody's paying taxes and everything. But, when you think of it, it should be, a real fairly even split when you think of population base, and then knowing that our citizens in just the town of Lakeview end up paying more for more coverage. I don't know what your guys' budget is, and I could easily look at it. But, with 9, it's at a certain number, and then when you add, our budget of roughly 600,000 and change, you're looking at 5 to 6. I mean, this budget actually included a 6th position. But the cost is a little bit more, knowing that your equipment's better and you guys are covering a larger area, there's overhead that's more. But when I'm trying to think of just, when you look at the sheet that's provided and you look at the coverage and where people are at just in the south end, and you add those other 5 into this, a lot of why we were trying to get to 6, and we were talking about public service fee of $10 to pay for that 6. If we just actually went with more of a 5 approach, adding 5 to this, which with 6 down already currently helping cover, I think, in my opinion, it seems like it should be really easily to have double coverage 24 hours a day. Am I misunderstanding this sheet, this possibility of how we can move forward?
Yeah, because I think what we need to do is we need to eliminate the thought process of the city has this many and the county has this many.
Yeah.
We have to look at, this is how many we have as a whole to provide coverage here. So the 24-hour coverage, I'm against. Unless we can put a minimum of 2 deputies out there at any given time. Because I don't want to risk the safety. I would rather have somebody called out to respond to a call, 2 of them, than have one person out there respond to a domestic call. Because inevitably what happens, they feel this need that they have to go in and they have to resolve this before their backup gets there, which is stupid. You wait until your backup gets there, because now we have an officer going to a call. Now, instead of a resolution to the call, now the officer's getting the snot knocked out of him. It turns out to be we call the 1299 officer down. And we have 2 problems. We got the domestic, we got the officer down. Now people are having to go into a unknown situation. There's more of a risk to that responding officer than there was if they would just have waited and gone in together. And I'm seeing that with Officer Cisco. Not that he's putting himself in danger recklessly, but I don't think he's been trained not to do that. We had a suicidal person today. Instead of him and I responding, instead of him waiting for me, he goes right in. Wait for your backup. That way, if there's a life-threatening situation, you're not at risk by yourself. You have another person there. And I think it's just little things like that that need to be taught that have never been taught. So the training is very important in that aspect. But to get back to the situation, 24-hour coverage, I don't think it's necessary. We already run 21 to 22 hours a day. The peak calls for service aren't in the wee hours of the morning, but that's when your people are out walking the streets. And that's where I would like to get that proactive approach with people in plain clothes, 2 officers walking the streets and stopping, contacting, identifying, and the most minor violations, arresting. Have a no tolerance policy, because we have our methers out there. They're stealing, they're burglarizing, they're doing their drug transactions, and we're not there to prevent it. But for the calls for service, there's not that many. I think there was, 3 a month in certain hours that wouldn't justify having 2 deputies on, where you could kick them back a little bit, where there's a higher volume of calls where they're needed, as opposed to there's no calls and you got 2 people out there and you're dependent on them to be proactive. Well, those hours of their work, people get tired. You're meant to sleep at night, not during the day, and they start winding down and you're getting a little exhausted. So I don't think the 24-hour shift coverage is necessary, but the bottom line is this: it's a work in progress. If it's something that we need to do, we can implement it. We have enough people to do that.
So the one thing that I would add to that is I went through, it was a 3.5-day boring, analytical, statistical data class on how to compile 24-hour coverage. We're mandated in our jail by the state of Oregon to have 2 people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They don't care about injuries, sick leave, family deaths. They don't care about that. That is required by law, and so we always do that. You do it in the jail with 11, and I'm telling you right now, it gets thin with 11. Because you cannot forecast somebody's family member getting sick, somebody getting hurt, vacations, elk season, deer season. I mean, it is an absolute nightmare, and I'm telling you, 11 is as thin as you can go to make it work, and that's what we have. And there's times where we're pulling in dispatchers, paying them temporary wages to come in there and cover a shift because we're that thin. And so I've lived it for 14 years of scheduling that jail, and I'm telling you right now, 11 is as thin as it gets. And so I would really, really look at that, trying to make that a requirement, because I agree with the sheriff. There's no one person that I would put out there by themselves from 2 to 4 a.m. when they have a potential of a high-risk incident, you've got to have that double coverage. And then the only other thing I would throw in there is the sheriff and I both handle calls, and we're call responders, but that's not our primary job. I mean, there's a whole lot of administrative stuff that goes on with budgets and schedules and meetings and, you know, things that go on that we can't be in that rotation of being a guaranteed body. And so if you do the numbers then, now you're back to 9. And those are your 9 full-time call responders, and you can't pull off that 24-hour coverage and give them their vacations and their time off with their family without ensuring their safety. So that would be all I would throw into that. And I have the formulas, I don't have them with me, but I can give you guys the numbers and the way that you actually calculate out what you need to make it work 24 hours to coverage for a calendar year. And it's a long equation, but it's pretty accurate.
And if you look at the November schedule, from the 3rd of November to the 13th of November, the city has absolutely nobody available. So we're coming in and covering the city for that time, so Officer Sisman can have his vacation.
Appreciate those comments, because I don't, you know, your call load is absolutely, makes sense why you would not need a full 24-hour coverage. I think, you know, if you looked at the numbers throughout the whole region, how many departments, agencies, or whatever are doing 24-hour coverage, state, county, the few communities we have, most are not, most if not all are not, you know, in Eastern Oregon kind of thing. So, you know, when I look at, you know, if you take, you know, 600,000 and hire 5 officers, you know, you already had 6 covering this area roughly, you know, in the south end, and primarily Lakeview, west side, you know, Valley Falls, whatever, but, you know, yeah, there's not a lot going on, you know, plus, but you add these other 5 in there, you know, and you really have got, you know, roughly way more coverage than you've ever had, especially when you talk about, you know, the camp, there is no dividing lines now. Everybody responds, and you know, I think it was a scheduling conflict sometimes with 5 too, because then, yeah, with sick leave or vacation leave, you know, what appeared to be pretty, you know, good coverage backup wise as well, wasn't always the case. And so by having this in one department, you're able to make those scheduling, you know, adjustments so that you never shorthanded like what we're experiencing so often. Is the case, so.
Well, and that went both ways. I mean, we experienced the same exact thing in the sheriff's office is we're trying to look out for our guys and schedule to where we always have some coverage out there. And then you're doing the same mirror over here, but they're not on the same team because there's that division of the town looks like a checkerboard when you start getting on the outside edges because this lot's annexed, but this one's not. And this street is, but the other side of the street isn't. And it's a mess. I mean, so I usually check on in the mornings at 4:30 and I go wherever they send me. If they send me to Center Street or 12th Street or Valley Falls or Paisley or West Side, that's where I go. I don't draw no lines. I'm the only guy on at that time of day and I use my judgment on, is this something I need to call for somebody and wait, or do I need to go deal with it? You deal with a lot of medical calls, a lot of unattended death stuff that time of the morning. That's when our elderly people are usually found and they didn't, you know, they died in their sleep or whatever. So there's a lot of calls like that that don't require a 2-man unit, but when you get that domestic at 4:30 in the morning, that's a shaky situation. But there does become that separation when dispatch is actually dispatching a PD officer to a call. Now he's by himself, he doesn't have, in this instance, there's only one of them to start with. So we're always monitoring the radio, OSP's monitoring the radio, trying to ensure that we're gonna go help. But I agree with what Darwin said, if that's all under one roof, scheduling wise, we see that, oh, this guy's going on vacation, we're gonna have to push shifts up and back to where we've got that 2-man coverage, and you know, we may decrease the overall coverage for a day, but we won't leave anyone hanging out there where it's the only guy out there at 3 in the morning.
There's going to be times that it's going to appear as if we're crawling all over each other because there's going to be an exorbitant amount of deputies out here. But that's when we can start working special emphasis, assigning people to problem areas, and doing certain things that we haven't been able to do in a long, long time. So with that being said, we're not just going, if you agree to contract, we're just not going to say, okay, the town's in the dust. We're going to have a designated person coming to council meetings, updating you, working with you as to, okay, where are the problem areas? What complaints are you guys getting? Where can we work on? What can we do to assist people that are making their complaints to you? And like I say, it's not just going to be the Lake County Sheriff's Office show. We're a team, and we work as a team, and if we don't work as a team, we've accomplished nothing, so.
Are you gonna be able to sell this team approach to the rest of your deputies?
Again,
I know you said that they will do what you tell them to do, but that doesn't do an attitude.
No, I mean, it's how you tell them. I mean, it's basically how you do it. I was elected to run the sheriff's office. This is the way we're running the sheriff's office. This is what we're doing. Now, I hate to be harsh, but if you don't like it, go find another job, because this is what we're doing. It's not a democracy here. It is a autocratic, to a certain degree, leadership type position. So this is the way I'm running the sheriff's office. I get input from my administration. I do get input from my deputies, but I make the decisions. And again, I don't hire you as a deputy to argue with me and not want to do what you're here to do. I hire you to do a job. This is a job I'm designating you to do it or go someplace else, because there's other people standing in the line that want this job. It's all how you present it. I have a great relationship with my deputies. They'll walk through fire if I ask them to. That's just the type of people they are. Yes, they will accept it with open arms. And they'll do the best
It
job.
would be different too if it was, we have a full staff and we're asking them now to help cover all of the, south end or something, because now they're gonna be in their cars more, and driving more distances and out away from the community more. In this case, we've got, really, staff who are already used to traveling a long ways, and now they also will have the opportunity to focus more on in town, and they may really appreciate that. You may have people that'll even be boosted a lot more, knowing that, hey, we don't have to spend a lot of those time doing those long drives these days. We can spend some time just in town.
Well, and then we can, they'll get some, I mean, if this integration happens and everybody's called a deputy, they'll get some interactions that they haven't gotten in the past either. They're gonna get civil opportunities to go serve civil papers. They're not always bad. Sometimes they're good. They'll get to do subpoenas. They'll get to do search and rescue operations. I mean, that's something the sheriff's responsible for. We pay them for it, but the opportunity would be there if they were a deputy. Doesn't mean that we're gonna deplete anything anywhere, but they would have opportunities to get to participate in things that they don't currently participate in.
I like the, the unified approach on this, because it really, you're always gonna have turnover. I mean, we were, and as a shorter staff, it is so much more difficult to deal with turnover. As a planning director, staff of one, if I were to leave, all that institutional knowledge leaves, and so having a one-stop shop on this, it really makes it that, yes, you'll still have some turnover, but it's, functionally, you guys don't lose anything when people do move on to, what they consider better things or whatever, so. And I look at this as a huge win all around. I mean, the money's getting spent, the service is there, I guess I finally had a request, it'd be that, your decals that get paid for on the car, really show each of the communities that you serve, because I think even for the North Lake, it's important that they realize that, these deputies up there serve not just Christmas Valley, but you're serving Fort Rock and Silver Lake and Summer Lake and all these other places, and, to put all the communities, I think it'll look really cool on the rigs, just to see each of the communities, Plush and Odell and, stuff. I just think it would be kind of cool, because, I mean, people want to know that, oh, the sheriff's here, well, this is the town of Lakeview, and, if you at least had, serving all these communities, and you saw Lakeview on there, you would kind of, oh yeah, they serve. I like that idea too, so, I don't know. I know that in some other jurisdictions, when they do
you'll have those contracts in place, that sometimes you say that also serving this community or whatever. It's a simple thing, but really, to me, not a lot of this, I mean, we're not police officers, we're not law enforcement, so, you guys, to me, we've had a, kind of a sinking ship for a while, it feels like, on this program and the service, and, to Roberta's credit, she's tried her best to get people in place, and for whatever reasons, it just hasn't worked out, so I think, I've been hoping for this for a long time, but I think, strike while the iron's hot, and it's been hot, so I mean, we gotta, to me, we make the move, and if we wanna do it, then, we shouldn't delay, it should be something that, I think you guys have presented a great program here, and it makes sense to me. The sooner you get this working, I mean, we know, just like you said, I mean, we're gonna have a week and a half here of no coverage at all and that puts a lot of strain on you guys, and, financially too. I mean, I'm surprised the commissioner would come in here and say, hey, what the heck's going on, but, it's not budget time, but it is.
Yeah, I have to give the commissioners credit. They're allowing us to make the decisions that we need to make. And I don't think if I was a commissioner that I'd want to say, don't provide law enforcement in the community or the town of Lakeview, because there's a pushback on that by the citizens. And, we're again, I have emphasized this over, we're not separate entities, we're one team. And we're here to help each other out. And I would hope that if we were short, OSP's helped us out a lot, the PD's helped us out a lot when we were short and you guys were full staff. I remember when we had the fires, we had every resource we had down at those fires. We had nobody covering calls, and the PD covered calls for us for 2 or 3 days, 24/7. So it's just what we do. When people, we help each other out, I mean, I think people see it and they appreciate it. It goes to that community partnership that we're helping each other out. And Sharon, to answer your question probably a little bit better than what I did before, is I think our deputies will welcome this with open arms. And the reason being is because if we get more people, that'll give them relief.
Yeah.
They're not handling so many calls in such a short period of time. They'll be able to take a call, and somebody else will take a call, and somebody else will take a call. And so they're not just going one after another, and get so overwhelmed with investigations they can't keep up.
Well, I think one of the advantages will be that officers will be able to spend more time on a particular case. And the people who are victims have that and need to know what's going on, and, a recontact maybe, and say, refer this to the DA's office, or just little things that get the citizens to understand that you guys are actually doing something besides taking an initial call.
Right.
I love the integrated approach, the team concept, and if that can work, I don't see a downside. I think that if we can make that work and work out the financial logistics of what we can offer you and what you need, and hopefully we can make those two things, jive. But that's the most impressive thing I've heard you say, Sheriff Taylor, is that it's going to be a team approach. It'll be integrated. It's not going to have that division. And maybe if our area can see that work with the law enforcement, maybe that can be something that could work in other areas.
Absolutely, I agree. The only other thing I would add, when you ask about where we get the 4 people, we haven't had a patrol job. I think it's been about 22 months. But we had 9 applicants the last time that we flew a job, and that was for North Lake County. And so that's probably the least desirable place in Oregon. And so the fact is, we had 9 applicants for that. We didn't interview all those 9 applicants. Some of them didn't make background, some of them didn't make the process, but that just would give you a little bit of a preview on, for whatever reason, and I don't have any inference to what it is, but for whatever reason, we're a little more attractive for the applicant pool. I think we had 14 for our last corrections position, which is a whole different animal, but But, so we seem to get a little bit better interest than what we've seen when the town flies a job. I mean, it's pretty tough, so I don't know why. I mean, I'm not
Just
casting stones at anyone, I don't know why, but
It just is.
Just that unprofessionalism or not having that steady person here to lead the department.
And
It's
that's
visible, it was visible.
that's the only other thing I would say to the length of the contract is that could be hamstringing us on a hiring process if there's no projection on this is a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, whatever that plan looks like on paper. I don't want applicants to feel like, well, I don't know what happens to me in 2 years, what happens to me in 3 years, what happens to me in 5 years. I mean,
It's better than thinking in 2 years, I'm not gonna be here anyway, so who cares?
that's true.
You know, because
Yeah.
that happens a lot to us.
That's one thing I'd considered before, what you also brought up, Roberta, is that, we're having a real struggle hiring people because they know that our chief positions turn over so much. Even our chief position is hard because he knows that there's so much turnover in our police officer positions and, but knowing that you have, an elected sheriff and that boss will stay the same for 4 years, obviously without a recall or something like that ever happening, then
Man, that's pretty rough.
I'm just talking about, with the position in general, so like, the next
I wanna
time,
hear you two are gonna be. the
in
next
4 more years, the next person would know, any hiree would know that, oh, I've got the same boss for the next 4 years, and after that I could decide to go somewhere else, or I know, and to me, that should help a lot in hiring. I never thought about that. Prior to today.
I think if Chief Behan was here, things would be run smooth. I think he was a very quality person. We got along great. I could see, I saw him going down the same path we were going. I had very, very high hopes and aspirations that this is finally, unfortunately, it just didn't work out. So.
Well, I just want to, my final thought on this is, I hope this becomes a model for Eastern Oregon. I really do, because I think smaller communities need to kind of look at what's best for their citizens and where you can, when you're divided so much, it's hard to really get the best service out there and quality service and overlapping coverage. And so I think hopefully the other communities like Burns and Hines and others will kind of go this route. There's been a lot of talk among citizens who hate the divide. They want this unified, service. And this could be hopefully something where we get a good contract in place that would work for everybody.
So what's our next step?
I would just recommend this. I'll just wait until I hear which direction the council wants to go. When I hear the council, let's say hypothetically the council has decided, yes, this is what we want to do, I will start working on a contract. And I will prepare that, and then I will present it to the council. You guys look at it, take your time, pick it apart, add, delete, do whatever you want, then we'll come back and we'll figure out a good workable product that benefits both of us. And then once we have that done, then it can go to the commissioners and the council, and then the legal eagles that need to make it binding. But while that is being done, if you decide that's the direction you want to go, we can put a notice out for hiring. And we can get that ball rolling. Because it's going to be, what we do is we run it, for 90 days? Or, I'm sorry, for 30 days?
The last time, I think we were at 21.
21 days?
14 to 21 days, and then we'll set up interviews based on the background checks.
So our next meeting would be the 13th. Do we want a special meeting to make this decision? Because we can't make it now in the work session. So we need to call something quickly so we can make this decision. If that's the first step for us to decide, is that's what you're telling us.
Commit or pass.
Either way.
Right.
I need to back up here. I walked in 3 minutes late and something transpired before I got in here that I didn't know about.
Okay.
So if I could have an explanation, all I heard was the details of how you've got a new position in the county, but I've heard nothing about the amount of money that it takes to do that.
We're way away from that conversation.
Okay, so you want a commitment from the town to commit to you for,
No, what I want is
because
just
you can't get a commitment from your county until next year.
No, I'm gonna make it perfectly, I want this to all be transparent. And you know, I'm the kind of person that I insert my foot in my mouth and engage my lips before my brain oftentimes, but I want to be perfectly upfront. I don't want to spin my wheels, and I don't want to do any work on this unless there's a commitment from the council saying, yes,
Yeah.
we are interested. And then
And
at that
if we don't
point,
agree with the contract, then, you know, then it's null and void.
Okay, well, I just thought I missed something because I didn't hear a monetary
We're
amount
just saying
whatsoever,
that
and
we
you said
have
it
to
would be next
proceed
year before your county commission
not.
can make a decision, because they won't be in place until next year. So it's, you know, we're 2 or 3 months off.
Well, the county commissioners can make a decision before next
Right.
year.
Well, if he wants to take it to them, but,
Yeah.
and, you know,
And I
it
think
depends
the
on who's
sooner the
in a
better.
position to do so. Yeah, that's right.
I can tell you this, Mark Albertson, the commissioner-elect, is in favor of it. Dan Schown is in favor of it. Ken Kessner is in favor of it. I don't know where
Okay, so they
Brad
could do
Winters.
it before.
Yeah.
I don't know
What
what
you're
Brad
saying.
Winters is because I haven't discussed it with him. And I didn't want to sit down and start going through all this is what we'd like to do until we heard from you.
Right.
Because it was premature. I didn't want people to think, okay, well, the sheriff is in there and he's discussing contracting and stuff. Well, you know what? I don't want to do that until I know, okay, this is a thing that is realistic to do. And then we can sit down with them and
So all you're asking from us right now is not an agreement to do this. It's an agreement to, let's take that next step and find out what's out there for us, and how it's gonna be, and what the contract's gonna look like, and what are our obligations, and what you're providing.
well, what I would like to hear is this, that the council has decided they want to pursue a contract. That's all I need to hear. And then I will start working on a contract. And then I'll put something together, and then we can dissect that and add to it and delete or whatever. But at least the ball's rolling, we know what direction we're going to do. Somewhere, somehow, some way, we're going to have a workable product that is livable for both the town and the county. And then once we get that ironed out, then it goes between the commissioners and the council, and then, but in the meantime, we can work forward, because we know we're going to do this, it's just working out the logistics of what we're going to do. And we can put out a hiring process and get the ball rolling and see how many applicants we got and go through like the oral board process. And in the meantime, if there's a commitment that, yes, we want to do this, we will continue providing all the services that we have provided to the town and
Especially
continue
next
that.
week.
If there was not a commitment, what would happen?
This is what I would do. I got a letter typed out, ready to give to Roberta, saying that we will discontinue our services to the county of Lake commencing November 1st, other than in-progress person crimes. All routine calls, all non-priority calls, we will not respond to anymore. We
You just
just
can't
no
stretch
longer
yourself.
cannot do it. And it's not just, it has nothing to do with, okay, well, I'm not getting my own way. I have to protect my people. And, you know, I'm elected to take care of the Lake County Sheriff's Office. And my people are the most important thing to me, and I have watched them suffer for months. And I can't go down that road anymore.
So Roberta, can you talk to legal counsel about just some, I know our regular meeting is when it is, but, you know,
We need.
we've been under, yeah, I mean, it needs to be handled as soon as possible. I mean,
Yeah.
there's emergency clauses and this and that, I mean, we've been in an emergency situation for a while.
Yeah.
So
I think-
if we can call an emergency meeting, I'd make myself available to begin with, and then make that determination, and we can't make it now, like, as this is a
No.
work session with no decision making.
Consensus, so.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, under consensus, without even saying consensus, that's why we need the meeting
Yeah.
to make that,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
decision.
in the interest of making this thing a little quicker, you know, getting the ball rolling and finding out if it's going to work and getting those steps taken. I think that's imperative for us. Especially if Sasna's gonna be gone for a week.
It's just fun.
Sitzville. So, it is.
Trust me, there's not a law enforcement out there that will stand by and not respond to a crime in progress where it involves a person. We're just, I don't care whether we agree or disagree or whatever the case is. If that's happening, I don't care who you are, we're going, and we're going to take care of that problem. We're not going to allow anybody to get hurt under any circumstances if we can prevent it.
But we need more than that.
Yes.
For the people.
Okay.
Okay, does council have anything else for the sheriff?
Thank you both for
Thank
coming.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
That's a pretty clear cut discussion.
Thanks, guys.
Again, it's not a very sophisticated, it's a very simple process. And I think if we can make it as sophisticated and as difficult as we want, but really it's pretty simple.
Thank you.
So thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Paul.
You betcha. Thank you guys.
You too.
Well, I'll tell you the same thing I told Roberta. I said, at this point in time, we really don't have a choice. Because it doesn't matter who you try to get for a police chief, they're gonna eat them up. Unless we get one that,
Well, I think we are kind of in agreement with all that. I think we just need to decide on a date for a meeting as soon as we can get one.
The thing that's going to make or break the contract is the financial end, I think. It's, how much of, do they want our whole $600,000? What's left of our $600,000? Where we stand financially, what do we have to turn over to them to make this work? Because we've got to pay for a certain number of officers, evidently.
Well, we would not have to pay overhead at the department, for the things that we have to pay for
Like,
at heating, your utilities, your everything like that, I know
so we
that,
close
but-
that building?
No, well,
We
they
don't
don't use
close
it
the
for other
building,
things,
but
I'm
the police
sure,
office will be
but
primarily,
It would be based out of there.
courthouse.
I think there's a lot more involved, and I'll
Yeah.
just throw this out. I
Yeah.
don't think we have any business being in dispatch if we're not running law enforcement. So there's a lot more involved, and I think we need to have a very in-depth work session before we get into all of this discussion and handing it over.
I don't think we're handing it over. We're saying,
Well,
let's see what your offer is. That's all we're
And
doing
this was
at
the
this point.
first
Yeah,
step.
we can reject this, we can absolutely reject this. I think
Yeah.
it's just,
And the 911, they
But,
have to have
and are they now,
because they may come up with this with numbers that just won't work.
are they now county
This isn't gonna work.
employees?
They would be.
We have to.
See, so they would not, we wouldn't be paying PERS, but somebody has to pay
Yeah.
PERS.
Right.
Well, PERS is included in our budget now.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, but so that's what I'm saying, so
Yeah.
if they're gonna be county employees, then their insurance changes, their, all
Well,
kinds of things.
their
I've watched
PERS doesn't
Michaela go
change.
through that.
But the PERS won't change, and
But I
that's,
think there's some legal questions we need to cover and have our
Yeah.
legal counsel here.
I think
and
all we're saying is for
Look at it.
For
Well,
this next step is, we want to see the contract, we want to see how you're going to work
I
this
was
out.
gonna say.
And then we can always say, no,
We
that's
need,
not.
we need
Yeah, because I
to,
didn't hear an
possible.
offering, really. I heard we can increase your manpower. That's it.
Yeah, no, they didn't get into the money,
There
the
was
only
nothing. There
money
was
they
nothing
got
to it.
into, Mike, was how much is
Okay,
costing
I
them
just-
to do this extra coverage.
Well, and then, I know that our taxpayers pay a portion already.
Of theirs.
So,
Yep.
that's something we need to consider when we're making a decision. That's how much do our taxpayers pay?
I know we had talked about it, I
Yeah.
guess CIS couldn't be here or
No,
whoever.
he said he'd come probably next week or the next.
I'm gonna turn to the LOC, I'm gonna call tomorrow and find out exactly what the LOC says that it is a requirement of a community, because I think that's something we all need to know as far as law enforcement. I did read up on a lot of what the sheriff is supposed to do for county residents, and I think we all need to see exactly what we should be looking at here and what we should want to pay for enhanced services, because that's all we're asking for, enhanced. You heard him say, and you mentioned, all of those other communities get their little tag. Well, how much are they paying extra? You know, they're not really communities, they're unincorporated, but they're also getting services from that
It
same
is
department.
interesting, I kind of look at it like that.
Well, I just, you know, Paisley, I will mention this, I mentioned it to Roberta, and I'll mention it to you guys. Paisley, as far as I know, according to a person who has been on the council for a long time that I've served with on other committees, told me that they pay nothing extra. They have problems. I mean, I know it's a small community. We have problems here. I'm not saying that
They
we
need
don't.
3 people in the North Lake,
Yeah, that's
Christmas
it.
Valley in that area, so.
But that does cover
They're not-
Paisley, I mean.
Yeah, but they're not paying extra either, they just pay their taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we
So I
pay
think-
the same amount in, to
That's what I'm
county?
wondering for. There should be some kind of, we need to know if we're paying extra for, or if our citizens are paying extra on their property taxes, because that's where it would be coming from. It would be coming from their property taxes. Is there a certain amount of that allocated for law enforcement? If there is, we're stuck. That's what we have
Well,
to put
I
into it, or, you know.
This goes to the general fund, and then our general fund
If it's a
pays
certain
the
amount, that-
police department. But yes, every county resident pays the same rate for being a county resident.
Yeah.
So
So whether we're
everybody,
in the town or not.
and 50% of the people live above Paisley as well. We have
And
to think about that. I
If
mean,
y'all all recall, the uproar we had was because we're not providing 24-hour service. We're not gonna get it here either. You just heard that.
Well, we're not
Yeah.
gonna get it, and
It's
I.
closer to it, I agree.
I
but-
understand that part of it right now because
So
of the.
that uproar we had though was unfounded because
But I-
we can't
That's why
provide
we-
it, they can't provide it, and it's not gonna happen through a dual.
I do like that,
Integration.
the 2 undercover officers patrolling the streets, you know, at certain hours, and I'm thinking maybe they can clean up the mess down at the library, for instance, and kids who are over across the park from my house. And you've got to be able to hear them too, and those kind of things. If they're out and about and finding that, and there's a no tolerance program, I'm kind of liking that. But, again, the financial industry.
Well, that's what concerns me is the financial end of it and how much they expect us to pay for it. And I don't think our $600,000 budget should be theirs.
And just
That's
an
my feeling.
FYI, I don't know if any of you read the bulletin, because it just came out Friday, but there is a very strong possibility that the FCC or whichever, one of those commissions are going to take away the franchise fees. So we're looking at, and it's only through, it's not like Pacific Power, but it's the
Utilities.
the utility, not sanitation, but it's just for the lines, the telephone lines.
Cutters or something.
Yeah, so that, right off the bat, is gonna take at least 30,000 off of that, you know, our budget right off the bat. So just keep that in mind when we're starting to talk about dollars, because that's 30,000 right off the bat that we tried to gain, you know, so we really wouldn't have that extra person funding in the police department. So that's something that came up just today, so.
Because you're talking charter, Central Hunters, and all
LS,
this.
yep, yep. So if that happens, which it sounds like it's going to, then that's 30,000 right off the bat, right off the top. We won't have to negotiate anything, so.
When was that ruling gonna be made?
I don't know when it is, but it sounded like a little shortly.
Who's making that
So is
decision?
LOC
Our
kind of
legislature?
fighting that?
I think so,
As
yeah,
well?
yeah, but they're going to put it out in the little bulletin.
Oh, it's in the,
Yeah.
LOC
It is,
bulletin.
Yeah,
That's-
so-
Oh,
that's
it's
kind of
in the
scary.
LLC.
LOC,
Yeah,
Oh.
so anyway, just wanted you to know, but,
that's good.
yeah, because we're gonna have
It's
to
a
be
big
cutting
deal.
some of our,
30,000.
so,
Hopefully people.
Well, let's figure out when we want to have a meeting. You know, I'm good for any time.
Well, I am too, I guess, but, could we, now who are we gonna have here from CIS?
Kurt Chapman, he's the risk manager.
But I mean, can he get here next week if we,
I believe he would.
if we
Yeah.
could make it like
Yeah.
Tuesday next week or
So
something?
that would be
Yeah.
like this, the next week is the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and Friday is the 9th, so that's
So
never
the
a good
6th
time.
is Tuesday.
So 6th is a Tuesday, does that sound good?
Yeah,
Is that good for everybody?
Yeah, is it, will it be 4 or 3?
Four, because we've already discussed, well, we've discussed part of it, we haven't discussed everything we probably need to. But at least it gives you guys time to think about some things to discuss too. And
Well, some things to discuss,
during
but
the work
I think
session.
the main goal of the meeting will be to say, we are interested, show us a contract. And we kind of have to go from that,
Yeah.
you know, in a way, because we can,
That's
all
really,
these other things that we just talked about will,
Yeah,
will
come in
need,
later.
yeah, will need to be discussed as part of the contract.
but one of the things we need to find out is that tax base thing. Because if we're paying in Lakeview the same amount Paisley's paying, and granted, they're certainly helping us out, and that's not a disagreement, but why do we have to pay that much more extra if we're already paying for those services?
And we'll have to try to figure out that. So.
Yeah, so we need to find out, do we pay, or do part of our town taxes go to law enforcement for the county?
I think
We
that-
know
It just
part of
goes in
it
the
goes to
general
the
fund.
town.
That's what it
It
goes.
goes in the general
And then
fund, and
it's
then
split.
the general fund budget, I mean, the budget for the sheriff's office comes out of the general
Right,
fund, is that
right.
what you're saying? Yeah.
So it's planning, so it's
Mhm.
assessors.
All that comes out of the
all
general
that
fund.
stuff.
So
So it's not allocated
It's
per
not
se.
So
allocated
it's
for
for
law
tax
It
enforcement.
won't show up as a,
But we should be able to figure out how much of town property owners are contributing at this point.
it was roughly, what do we say, 1,600 accounts, water bills. So, you know, out of the 4,000 homes and, you know, which account to
Yeah.
residences, but I mean, the county budget's so much harder to kind of figure out because you've got, you know,
This
commercial,
much.
industrial, and all the other, you know, agricultural lands and stuff from that tax base, how that total dollar figure is generated. But
I understood their comments in regards to the division of 9th Street. But what happens when and if we annex the southern portion of the town of Lakeview? There is no division anymore. It's Lakeview that should be responding, or the sheriff's department that should be responding. You know,
Well, yeah, but
those
the-
divisions are
There will be no divisions if we do the contract.
If we do the
It
contract.
will be
there's
one
no
police,
division.
one
It's all-
sheriff's office.
They're
and
responsible for
They were
countywide.
responsible for whether it's annexed or not.
And fire chiefs did make that statement that our guys could not go south of 9. Yeah.
But you know,
So-
I remember, many years ago, they did have an interagency agreement between
Yeah,
the 3
that's-
police departments, which allowed them to go on call.
It should
And that was what they operated
It's
from.
probably still hanging out.
Well,
yeah, and there was no
it-
financial arrangement with that, it was just.
No, it was
covered
just,
back
it
up.
was just, yeah, support.
it's important.
And,
A lot of work.
because the sheriff's office and the Lakeview Police Department, and often state police, all only had one person on duty at a time.
How many state policemen do we have?
3 or 4. 3.
I think there's
Well, there's 4.
4, I think, with a game officer.
There's your guys 5. Yeah.
Oh,
So you
yeah.
have
Game.
Sandra, is it Rachel or Sandra?
Sandra.
Sandra, Scott, Cliff Hargis, Journey,
Hill.
and, I already said Hill, and then, Tag.
Hey.
It'll be 5. Brian Tag, and game officer,
Yeah.
Oh,
so that would be 5.
So is Tuesday a good day?
yeah.
Yeah,
Want to do a work session first so we can kind of.
Want to do a work session at 3?
Okay,
Yeah,
is that
that's good.
Okay.
3 and then a regular session at 4?
So we can make the decision.
Yeah.
Sheriff's Department's gonna be wise to say.
So it's an emergency?
No. It won't be, we got enough time. If it was tomorrow night, it'd be an emergency.
3% to 7%.
Okay, anybody have anything else on the work
Just-
session?
I just want to make a statement, if I can, another one. If you're contacted by Mr. Glass, you're
Mr.
supposed to
Glass?
let us know, let me know to, and we will contact legal counsel. Robert, it's FRANZ, I think, is the attorney that will be handling that, but no comment,
Yep.
okay?
If we are contacted by whom?
Foster Glass.
Yeah,
Foster, all that.
Yeah.
Turkey.
yeah, no comment.
And either him or his attorney, or?
Right. We'll direct
We don't
it all
talk to
through.
anybody.
No,
You wanna talk to
trust
us,
me.
you make it a formal
Don't say
hearing.
anything to anybody.
And what was the attorney's name?
Robert Franz.
Franz.
FRANZ, I think, but I'm not positive of the last two.
But if he says attorney, you just say, I don't wanna talk to you.
Well, I understand that,
Okay?
Okay.
We have nothing else, and we will adjourn the work session at 4